Okay. All right, meeting is called to order. Let's start with roll call.
Ms. Beck?
It's Bex. I'm
Bex,
here.
okay. Ms. Cooper Payton? Ms. Harrell?
Here.
Ms. Hetland?
Present.
Mr. Jacobson? Ms. Jones?
Here.
Ms. Orcherton?
Here.
Ms. Salmon?
Here?
And Ms. Snyder?
Here.
Okay, next is approval of minutes of the previous meeting. Did anybody have any changes or comments? Okay, I'm going to move that we approve the minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right. There's no changes to the agenda, right?
There is one
Oh,
change.
I'm
Excuse
sorry,
me.
yes.
Sorry. ISYM Hip Hop's 2018 grants presentation is going to move to next month.
Oh, okay.
I don't see her sitting here. I wondered about that.
Oh, okay. All right, then I guess we'll start with the staff report.
How is everybody this evening?
Fine.
Good. Some are fabulous, even better. This is your September staff report. I'm going to begin first with the biggest sort of animal in the room for me, which is the Urbana Art Expo.
Yes.
It's coming up this weekend, September 15th and 16th. This is the first time ever that we are going 2 full days. You are likely well aware, but for folks who might be new, this is also the annual Juried Fine Arts exhibition and sale that we have sponsored together with the 40 North Champaign County Arts Council and the Urbana Public Arts Program. This year we're featuring the work of 17 artists. We'll have live musical performances and demos. We are including the following artists this year: Becky Canine, Carolina Rodriguez, Cindy Sampson, Drea Ahrens, Eka, Erica Ray Stark, Esther Rowe, Freya Replinger, Kelly Hieronymus, Kirsten Gilmore, Lynn Hawkinson Smith, Mark Anthony Macon, Marie Castile, Megan Hines, Ralph Rother, and Sakani Reed and Sierra Murphy. This year, we're excited to have the CU Jazz Collective doing a performance on Sunday, and all day Saturday, that is 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., we will have DJ'd music from DJ Silky, who has been involved in some of our open scene open mics and is also a local DJ who helped out this year at Girls Rock CU, teaching young girls how to DJ. So we're really excited to have her with us. But I just want to share with you a couple of things. I mentioned DJ Silky's going to be here. We're also thankful to Common Ground to help sponsor by offering coffee and tea for the expo this year. So we'll have kind of a coffee and tea bar in the morning that'll be complimentary at the expo both days. And then again, as I said, the CU Jazz Collective will be there Sunday, kind of for the lunch hour, so 12 to 2, more or less. And we're really excited to have all of them involved. Next, I want to mention Open Scene Open Mic continues. We've had quite a summer full of Open Scene Open Mic events, really working with different venues and kind of learning how to work through kinks and other things that come up with event planning with a series that changes all the time. And that was really the goal, is to kind of take the goals of Open Scene, which were to really bring a focus to our arts program that amplifies voices often underrepresented in the arts, and also really amplify the voices of youth. And so we have taken this kind of open mic series around to different businesses. The next one that we have is coming up here on September 26th, and it's at Urbana's downtown brand new dance studio called the Urbana Dance Company. And the studio's artistic director, Kaiten Solio, will be hosting that night. And we're going to have some performances from youth at the intermission. But we're really excited to also have it as more of a performance-focused one. So those who may have felt that, you know, maybe dance or other kinds of theatrical performances were a little bit more risky at an open mic full of poets and musicians can feel like this is especially their night to come out and really showcase what they have to offer too. I also want to mention that Art Now this September features Susan Parenti. Susan Parenti is a composer, she's an artist, and she's also the founder of the School for Designing a Society in Urbana. This is a production, of course, put on by the Urbana Public Television and Urbana Public Arts program together. And it really is about sort of storytelling about local artists. So we're excited to have her featured this month. And you can find out more about the School for Designing Society, which combines sort of activism, the theory of cybernetics, for anyone who knows what that means, and also, which is sort of the study of systems, and the arts and music all together in a school. That, little did you know, has been operating out of Urbana since, I think, the late 80s, early 90s. So it's been a really vibrant little school, and it brings people from all over the world. So she's going to be talking a little bit about that on the September episode. Next, I want to mention that we've had a really wonderful turnout for both the reception and the closing reception for Scenes of Downtown by Christopher Evans. These are illustrations of downtown Urbana that you can see on display at City Hall in the Urbana Free Library. I also am excited to report that our next exhibition, which is going to be a little bit of a pop-up, it's a shorter exhibition, is going to be going up next week, and it's called Belongings, and it's an exhibition on immigration. This was conceived of by some folks that we've been working with around planning some more intercultural events in the area, and primarily the Urbana Public Arts Program and the Urbana Free Library. And so what we've been doing is soliciting stories and photographs of artifacts or objects that for different local immigrants in the community tell a story of their experiences with immigration, with memory, with home, with family, and we've gotten quite a number of fantastic submissions. So what this will consist of is photographs of objects or artifacts and then an accompanied story from various people who've submitted to us for this project. And these go on display next week. And instead of a reception for this very short exhibit, we are going to have an open reception in conjunction with the Immigrant Welcome Awards ceremony and celebration that's going on September 22nd, Saturday, from 3:30 to 5 p.m. at the Urbana Free Library. What's really exciting about that is there's live music, it's the annual awards ceremony, and there's going to be quite a hubbub going on in the library, so it's a great opportunity to come out and see the exhibit. It will also be on display for a 2-week period. Following that, we also have an... I'm sorry. The time is September 22nd from 3:30 to 5 at the Urbana Free Library. Yeah, so please come out. And then following this, we are going to have a new exhibit called Loomed Beadwork by Judy Spencer. And if you're familiar with Judy's work, she makes beautiful loomed beadwork pieces, both jewelry, and she has a process by which she takes a photograph and creates a loomed beaded version of that photograph. So she has sort of landscapes that are done completely in tiny beads and loomed beadwork. Absolutely gorgeous. And so those will be on display too during the month of October. And we still have plans for the month of November to be a staff show for Artists of the Corridor called After Hours, which will feature work by City of Urbana and Urbana Free Library staff. Next up, I just want to mention this is the flyer for Belongings, and we encourage you to share information out about this. We're really excited to have it be included also in the Immigrant Welcome Awards program for this year. And I should just mention real quick, Immigrant Welcome Awards is hosted by the CU Immigration Forum, but what it is actually part of a National Welcoming Week moment for the United States, where it's put on annually by an organization, and cities all across the United States have some version of Welcoming Week events to really center the stories, the needs, and the celebration of immigrants in their local communities. So that's really the spirit in which this art exhibit was born. Next up, we had a rain out of Art at the Market recently for our second Saturday of the month. So we were excited to be able to make that call early this time, since if you've heard me say this already once before, this has been quite a summer for some weather issues out at the Art at the Market. But we were able to make that call a little earlier, and it did indeed rain, so it also was a good call, as it turns out in Illinois. That's a tricky situation. But we were able to move them to September 29th, both groups. So the Idea Store with their Make Art, Not Trash Recycled art workshop and Music by Sora Rise are both going to be at the September 29th Art at the Market, so come out for that. Next up, I'll mention that our most recent Young Artist Studio on July 15th featured stained glass kites with local artist Sierra Murphy. And our next one coming up here on the 30th, excuse the date error there, it's actually September 30th. It features artist Mark Enslin, and that's with puppet making. So we'll have a puppet making workshop that will culminate in a puppet show at the end. And my hope is to have UPTV there, be able to film a portion of the puppet show. Mark is also a part of the School for Designing a Society and uses puppetry a lot at the school. So we're excited to kind of have some collaborations going with the school. I'll mention too, the Urbana Sculpture Project continues to move forward. We have, again, we're placing races in our downtown area. This is by Bobby Joe Scribner, and comes out of Woodstock, Illinois. And the other piece that we're putting in Boneyard Creek Crossing, kind of near where A Thirst was, is Ice Pops by Craig Gray. This one's traveling from Key West, Florida. I've been in touch with both artists. Craig is probably going to install first. So even though he's coming from the furthest away, and the way that it's working out, we'll probably have an invitation to public arts commissioners and the public to come out for an installation event and reception, a little bit of a ribbon cutting, and my hope is to have lots of popsicles there. So I'll let you know exactly the details via email if it's before we see each other again. Social media marketing reports, pretty simple. We've increased by 58 since on Facebook since the last meeting. We haven't seen an increase in Twitter, but we've also seen an increase on Instagram. So we've had sort of a slow increase over time. One thing that I've been really working on is every time somebody says they're coming to an Urbana Public Arts event, if they haven't liked our page, there's a way for me to prompt them to like our page as well. But that is a great thing for you to do as well. If you happen to be inviting people to any of the events, please do, especially our Art Expo. See if they're also fans of the page and invite them to like the page. It's a great way to find out kind of real-time information. We don't send out the newsletter half as often as we send out just constant things on social media. So it's a great way to connect if people are using these platforms. Last but not least, I just want to, first of all, introduce our newest commissioner. So we filled the vacancy left by Jason Patterson, and we're excited to introduce Courtney Becks. Courtney's our newest commissioner to the Public Arts Commission. Thank you for joining us, Courtney. Courtney, do you want to say anything about yourself?
Sure. I'm the librarian for African American Studies and the Jewish Studies bibliographer at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign in the main library.
And Courtney brings some experience working with museums. She also moved to town less than 2 years ago, and almost, I want to say, maybe third week of you were in town, already reaching out to the Public Arts Program and other arts agencies in the area about how to get involved with the arts here locally. So she has a real passion for the arts, and I'm excited that you're joining us.
Thank you.
So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
And I do have another piece of new business that I was hoping Erica would be here to witness us sharing, but Erica's also let me know that she wants to focus more on participating on juries and other things and step away from the commission to focus her time on work. So we will have another vacancy soon. My hope is that Erica will also be joining us next month, where we can announce this again, present her with a sort of parting gift, and then potentially organize a time for us to kind of get together and celebrate her time on the commission, because she's been on the commission since 2016 and has given quite a lot of her time as well. So I wanted her to be here to announce that to you, but you're getting it from me. So we'll have to also give her her propers for all the time that she's given to us too. And with that in mind, we do have a board vacancy, so if you know anyone you'd like to suggest apply, we have that form available and we send it out. It's posted on the city's website, but also you can put them in touch with me directly in case they have questions about filling out the application. Last but not least, we are always looking for volunteer support. So the Urbana Public Arts Program in particular needs support for the Art Expo. I do have a sign-up sheet also for commissioners that's easily accessible online. It's sort of through a Google Doc. So if you want to sign up to staff any portion of this weekend, I would greatly appreciate it. I believe I sent it out via email, but I'm happy to send it again. And the times include sometimes on Friday, so we're beginning this Friday with the installation, starting as early as noon to start putting together walls and things, and then the artists are welcome to come at 5. I told them I might give them a notice that they can come a little earlier. And then between 5 and 9 p.m. they have some time, kind of post-work time, to set up their show, their booth. And then in the morning, we begin at 7:30, 8 o'clock with opening doors so that artists can come early. We go from 10 to 5, and then probably Saturday night we'll do a quick closing because we're not tearing anything down. But Sunday after 5 too, we'll have some other need some other help with that. So thank you to everybody who signed up already. You know who you are, and hopefully if you haven't and you're willing, let me know because I'd love to have you there. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Next, we're going to have a grant presentation by Jared Finn on Empowered, the web series.
Go ahead and bring up the presentation. But as I'm doing that, I wanted to thank the commission for the grant. The Empowered has been a labor of love for nearly 2 years, and we had a little bit of a hurdle last year, not able to get it off the ground, but the grant was what got us over the hurdle. So, but it is a rather simple presentation, straightforward. I'm just going to speak through the concept, just review the concept and the timeline of how we got things accomplished, connection between the project and Urbana collaborators, and what we used the funds for. But basically, Empowered, the series, is a web series focusing on teenagers' lives, specifically young females, as they develop superpowers. It's not meant to be, well, there are overly kitschy and campy moments because there are comedic moments, but it's not meant to be overly over the top like many Marvel movies or anything like that. It's rooted more in reality, but they just happen to have superpowers. It's focused on bringing in a diverse cast of characters, a lot of them based on people in my life or people I've come across, or the goal to bring attention to those that are normally not presented in the greatest light in media. The project was specifically the production of this series pilot. A lot of times the pilot for shows or web series is the launching point and helps us get the concept out there, and sometimes is the hardest part of the project to create, because from there on out the pilot can be used to build on the concept and give birth to more of the breadth and the mission or the ideas of the project. But the hope of the project was to turn the really bad depiction of female superheroes in mainstream media on its head. I present this as a joke. A lot of people, when I talk about the concept, but at the same time, it's very much a serious concept to me. But I was tired of seeing female superheroes in media look like they're straight out of a Jane Fonda 80s exercise video.
All right.
But I changed that up, but at the same time wanted to bring in local creatives and feature them. A lot of my projects, I love bringing in local musicians, local artists, local crew members to highlight the work of the overall artistic community. To move on to the use of funds, one of the cast members is based in Pennsylvania. So I had to bring him out, pay for lodging, pay for traveling, as I presented in the initial application. Funds went towards that. Funds have gone towards feeding crew and cast, so crafts table, refreshments. Usually, we went through 8 days of production total. Each day was about 10, maybe 12 hours at a time. So keeping the energy and the happiness of the crew and cast up is very, very important. Funds went towards various props and supplies that were necessary to executing the project. And then we covered artistic fees and crew fees with the grant. But the basic project timeline and completion was once we received word that we received the grant, we were able to begin planning the production schedule, really focus on hiring a crew. My director, Chris Wilcox, was already on the project with me, but we were able to bring in a director of photography who's based in Urbana. We're able to start planning a much more thorough schedule. We had an idea, this is when we can bring the actor out, this is what we have funds for, this is when we can get this accomplished, and we're able to do that as soon as we found out that we received the grant. Production began in June. First day of production was June 23rd and was spread out over 8 days until August 17th. The trailer, we do have a trailer that was released. We are currently in post-production and editing the pilot episode, but we are able to take snippets of it and release a trailer that's on YouTube, which I will, in lieu of behind-the-scenes photographs, I have the trailer pulled up to show once I am finished. Then the pilot episode is scheduled to be released on the evening of October 3rd during a screening party, a premiere party that is being hosted at the Independent Media Center here in Urbana. There will be a screening of the episode. We're going to have a meet and greet panel with the cast and crew that hopefully will be hosted by Rachel. And then we'll have local food trucks there. Nitro Cup is going to be there. Looks like Oh Honey Pie will potentially be there. I'm talking to a few others, but it will be a joint effort to bring attention to the series and bring attention to the media center, more attention to the media center, because the costume closet will be open for people to cosplay, and we are encouraging people to come in costumes and just to have a fun time. But as far as who we've all gotten involved that are based in Urbana, my production company, Malachi Entertainment, who's behind this series, is based in Urbana. My office is right down on Main Street. I am the producer and writer, so that is based in Urbana. My director of photography is based in Urbana. My sound engineer is based in Urbana. And then recently we're able to get a few Urbana-based musicians involved. Sun Stereo has given a song for our theme song. I am friends with Austin Duncan, who's also known as Snail, a more electronic musician. He has offered music for the score, and same with the group Charlie and the Possibly Wild. So that's one of my big goals, is to use any of my project or web series to especially highlight local musicians and get their music out there. And I grew up during the era of when the WB and the CW did that in the early 2000s, so I love doing the same with my project. Hopefully there's also another musician, Urbana-based. She is Urbana elementary school teacher who I hopefully will be able to score some of the projects. I have to discuss that with her further, but that is the basis of my presentation before I get to the trailer. I don't know if any of the commission have questions or anything like that, but I'm more than happy to answer.
Would anybody like to ask questions at this point?
Or I don't know if that happened. This is the first time I've ever done this.
Oh,
so.
sure. Usually wait till the end, but this is fine.
You want to show the trailer?
Yeah.
Oh, before I forget, the commission and the public arts program in the city of Urbana will be highlighted in the credits
Great.
of the series. Will be highlighted. Special thanks to the logo will appear at the end of the credits. I've already mentioned that in the description on the YouTube video that the trailer is in, but I'll pull up the trailer. I'll make sure, and I'll go ahead and play it.
Hey, Mr. Hogan, do you say?
Oh, nothing. How can I help you, Evie?
Well, I was wondering if I could speak to you about the spring musical.
Right now really isn't the best time. As you can see, my plate is rather full. There's a rather delicious frozen dinner calling my name in the teacher's lounge. Those overcooked brownies are just my favorite.
Please. What are you doing? Breaking the ice. Breaking... what? Hey, Tempest. I win again. What? You guys really need some practice.
Here you girls go. You must be starving. That last bowl went quick.
Bryn, a few of your teachers have expressed some concerns about your coursework.
And what does that mean?
The teachers in question believe that Bryn may be cheating.
I don't know how to explain it. One morning, I woke up and things that never seemed to make sense to me just so simple. Is there something wrong with me?
Okay.
Oh, nope, don't want that. And yeah, I think that concludes my presentation, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to say that I'm really excited, Jared, for this web series and seeing how it, not only the pilot, but how it's taken forward. And for those of you who are listening, I hope you might be able to make it out to the premiere he mentioned. It'll be a great opportunity to see a lot of different folks that helped make it possible. He mentioned also the costume closet.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how many people know about the costume closet in the basement of the Independent Media Center, but it's kind of this unique gem that was actually put together predominantly by Susan, who we feature on this Art Now that I just mentioned. September's Art Now features her. And really it's a place to also donate costumes. And because Halloween's coming up, I just want to mention it because it's an absolute resource for the community that not everyone knows about.
Yes.
We have a wide selection of costumes and makeup, all completely free to check out and use. For your theater productions, for your art shows, for your cosplay activities, for Halloween. I've been wanting for years to have like an open Halloween. We'll do your makeup, we'll do some, so one day, I'm speaking this now so it can like just happen at some point. But yeah, it's a really wonderful resource to know about. And I love when I see opportunities for artists to collaborate together. So thanks, Jared, and I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, I think next we have the review of the revised Arts and Culture Mission Statement.
Okay, I'm not going to take too much of your time. We had a lengthy discussion of this last meeting. And last meeting we had brought a draft of a sort of mission, sort of tagline, short version, lengthier version, mission statement, and then sort of a vision statement as well. So I went ahead and updated it based on some of the discussion last month, and I promised coming with a few next steps as well to this month's meeting, so I brought some drafted next steps. You don't have this in front of you, so you're all looking. You don't have this in front of you. I'm going to read it off to you, and then we'll chat about some of the next steps. So the tagline, of course, well, we're sort of keeping with this, like, where art thrives, so it's where arts and culture thrive. The short version is celebrating and nurturing Urbana's cultural and artistic diversity. And the lengthier version is the Arts and Culture program celebrates and nurtures the city of Urbana's cultural and artistic diversity. Our vision, our draft vision statement reads, "The city of Urbana is a place where arts and culture thrive. Here, all community members and visitors can engage in and experience the arts and culture through programs, events, initiatives that invite creative expression, celebrate diversity, enrich learning, build creative public spaces, and showcase the city of Urbana as a thriving destination for arts and culture. The Arts and Culture program embraces and celebrates our diverse and evolving histories, beliefs, cultures, and aspirations." So that's sort of where it is right now. You're not voting on it today. But I wanted to ask, after a second listen, if you had other feedback, things that you wanted, that you thought maybe were supposed to be there or aren't, or otherwise a fresh set of ears might have new thoughts, is sort of the idea. And then I'll go over next steps. So let's first take a moment. After hearing that, any suggestions? Can you read it again? Yeah. You want me to read it extra slow?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm a fast reader. Yeah. I'll read in my NPR voice. No, I won't.
Not Sophia Mosso, please.
Oh. "The city of Urbana is a place where arts and culture thrive. Here, all community members and visitors can engage in and experience arts and culture through programs, events, initiatives, and initiatives that invite creative expression, celebrate diversity, enrich learning, build creative public spaces, and showcase the city of Urbana as a thriving destination for arts and culture. The Arts and Culture program celebrates our diverse and evolving histories, beliefs, cultures, and aspirations."
Sounds pretty good.
Sounds pretty good.
I don't recall anything that we.
I would edit it, but
What do you
seems a
want to
little too long.
Too long. Okay, so possibly make
But
it.
without seeing it in
This is
front
the
of me.
vision statement, though.
The word culture appears a lot.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Since you were
Thank
brave
you.
enough to speak up,
Thank
I
you.
will too. Just seems like
I'm an editor, okay?
Yeah, I am
That's
too.
what
That's the thing. So I don't know how you could reword it, but get the same thought across, but
Yeah.
maybe not use the same words.
So condensing the vision statement a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a hair.
Okay.
Some of the repetition that's in it is kind of inherent to vision statements.
Yeah, that's true too.
Mm.
I did think of it as the vision statement tends to be a little bit lengthier, and it can even sometimes go into more detail than we have here, so it can actually outline the kinds of programs we have, and even, yeah.
That's what I was going to ask. I wasn't here for the
Mhm.
discussion about it, but you mentioned programs, events, and initiatives.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know how we're visioning those to be different. Why would
Right.
we list them all separately?
Well, and that might be, something that we will really get to the meat of when we actually start the visioning for an Arts and Culture Commission. I think I've struggled sometimes in the past with the differentiation between programs and events, but sometimes events are sort of like a one-time thing. Sometimes it can
They
occur
stand
annually, but a program might have events in it, but it might have other things as well. Like not all of it looks the same, et cetera. So, but that is for us to kind of develop as a commission to make sure we're on the same page about it.
Because if we list those specifically, then there are other things we do as a commission potentially that
Mm-hmm.
if we're going to list some stuff, we should maybe list all of it, or I don't know.
Right, or is the word like initiatives enough? Since events are also kind of an initiative of the program, or program is an initiative of the program.
You're sort of trying to be all-encompassing.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to, without having done it for a while, we don't know what it's going to look like until we do it, and then, so we're trying to describe a thing before we've done it,
Mm-hmm.
and be as general as possible,
Mhm.
but also be as specific as possible.
Right.
Well, I can give you the example of, for instance, like murals on glass. I would call that a program. It's not an event. Versus, things that we have like the Urbana Art Expo, that's an event. There's a stated time, it occurs. Murals on Glass is a program that puts murals on the windows of downtown, and they stay up for a period of 2 years, possibly longer. So it's more of an initiative or a program. But the word initiative might meet all of those needs. So
Yeah.
for instance, if we're working to condense it a little bit. But I could simply take the charge of trying to look for ways to condense it and do that for our next meeting. But I also hear the idea of maybe getting more specific in the vision statement. Or, I mean, for the purposes of our ordinance, we don't typically have a vision statement incorporated into the ordinance, as far as I understand, right?
Well, we'll go over the ordinance again next. We went over it last time, but in the prior ordinance, we have a much longer mission statement. And so our approach was to incorporate both a mission statement and a vision statement, so we can have a concise mission statement that's memorable, but we can have a lengthier vision statement that provides more detail. So it's just really striking the balance.
That's the hard part, striking a balance.
Yeah, but it's going to be in the ordinance, and you know, especially you can think how often we really referred to the detailed language of our lengthy mission statement as a commission. You know, it's something that is more to illustrate a point rather than something that we're going to go through and really use like their legal definitions or something. It's to illustrate the intent behind that concise mission.
So I hear the call to make it more concise, but I was wanting to respond to the idea that maybe it should also be more detailed at the same time, or like go into detail about individual programs. And that's maybe a question for us to answer about the ordinance and how much would it include like specifics about programs. If it didn't include specifics, I could still be somewhat condensed with the vision statement too, and bring both of those in a draft to you next month. Other feedback before we move on, though, about what you've heard so far? Sure. So the tagline is "Where Arts and Culture Thrive." The short version of the mission statement is "Celebrating and Nurturing Urbana's Cultural and Artistic Diversity." And the lengthier version is "The Arts and Culture Program celebrates and nurtures the City of Urbana's cultural and artistic diversity." And then this is the vision statement. Buckle up. "The City of Urbana is a place where arts and culture thrive. Here, all community members and visitors can engage in and experience arts and culture through programs, events, and initiatives that invite creative expression, celebrate diversity, enrich learning, and build creative public spaces, showcasing the City of Urbana as a thriving destination for arts and culture. The Arts and Culture Program celebrates our diverse and evolving histories, beliefs, cultures, and aspirations." So it sounds like the sentence that needs to be condensed is the first one.
It's long.
It's technically the second sentence, but yes, we can either break it up into two sentences or somehow condense it.
One of the characteristics of these things is the thing that turns people off, is that they're a series of lists.
I know.
And it's a list after a list
After list after list.
Yeah.
So.
That's why they don't remember it.
Yeah, but I don't, but this
But the
is
vision statement doesn't need to be remembered
Right,
in
right.
that sense, like it's not a tagline or a mission statement.
Right. And
Yeah.
I don't know how you fix that.
Yeah.
Because you either expand it so it doesn't sound like a list,
Mm-hmm.
or it's a list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other feedback or, I guess, preferences to that question even? Like, would you like to see it just maybe broken up a little bit more? The sentence, that what it seeks to achieve is who it serves, so community members and visitors, and then how they engage in arts and culture, and that's your list. And then in order for us to become a thriving destination. The words arts and culture do repeat a little bit, so I could probably remove them and immediately make it a little more condensed.
Yep.
But I could possibly break that up into two sentences, and it might have a different flow for the reader.
This may seem not workable, but I wonder if it's the formality of language. Not saying we should get rid of that, but what if you
Yeah.
had like a on-paper formal version
Mm.
and then a version that is easier that would still have all those details, but be a little more approachable somehow.
Mm.
So that if you had to put it on like a poster or
Yeah.
a mailing or something.
We want to see arts grow and build. We want it to do this and this, and be something that people won't be like, well, what are all these words? Or, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because it's not that it's jargony, but it's pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
When I read it, I'm like, what is that? And what is that?
Mm-hmm. Like, what does that truly mean?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you have something that's a little more person-oriented,
Yeah.
maybe that would help.
Yeah, even in the tagline. The tagline's already in a good direction, I think.
Yeah. So let me talk to you a little bit about the next steps that we were thinking. So for October's meeting, my hope was to redraft an ordinance draft for us to look at together and to present it then to you all as the commission. My hope is to also come with some potential changes to the grant program next month that would reflect some of the conversations we've had about the grant program, including last month's, and evolving needs as we become an Arts and Culture Commission and as we accept the responsibility for the special event funding. And so that was October. November, if we have our ducks in a row from an October meeting, if we're in agreement and feel comfortable with that ordinance, it would be a good time to present that to City Council. And to also hopefully solidify and release information about the grant program towards the end of November. We typically release the grants around that time, and we have talked about the timing possibly shifting a little bit, and those are the things the kinks that still need to be kind of worked out. So if we have, for instance, grant categories that tend to be larger sums, or if we change up whether they can be, for instance, a 1-year or 2-year grant program, we might have them on a slightly different timeline. Mm-hmm. But we still need to work that out. And then December, if that were adopted, that would mean that December could potentially be the first meeting of an Arts and Culture Commission. Now, this is, of course, if everything goes according to the schedule, and it could change. But then it would also present an opportunity for us to start visioning for an Arts and Culture Commission. So we haven't done sort of an annual visioning because we knew this change was coming. And that's when we'd begin that visioning. That would also help answer those questions about, like, well, what kinds of programs are we going to do? And that might also be an opportunity. I guess my brain's thinking in response to the question of, like, well, what if we put together sort of a more formalized language that might go into something like an ordinance, and then a more informal, personalized language that would go on something like a website and could potentially be more detailed. That informal, more detailed, reader-friendly version could be something that comes out of visioning, too, potentially later.
Sure.
So I could see that kind of shifting our vision a little bit. And certainly a vision statement's a little bit more of a working document because it should be, responsive. We talked a bit about culturally responsive programming last month. And of course, through that visioning process, really being deliberate about involving community stakeholders. So I've been in communication with quite a number of people just about the announcement of us exploring an Arts and Culture Commission, and some of the people we tend to work with already, and then people who haven't always seen the public arts program perhaps as a place that their cultural work can be recognized. And so I'd be excited to sort of invite them into that conversation and thinking about what could programming look like, if and how it would change. So that's the idea, but I wanted to get your feedback on what you would like to see as a commission and what feels feasible to you.
Sounds like a reasonable timeline.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The trickiness is that I see you once a month, and so lots of things happen between one month and the next,
Sure.
right? So I don't know how it feels to be on that side of things, but I could imagine it sometimes feels like things are moving fast. Where on my side of things, I'm like, things have been, been behind the scenes, been going for a while. So I'm excited to move forward, and I know we've got a lot of things coming up that are big. So my hope is that we could stick to a timeline as much as possible, but knowing that sometimes things might need to be a little flexible, especially as your feedback will influence things too.
Oh, just life happens too, so.
Yeah.
I guess one question I would have maybe to ponder would be like, if you can think about like the level of feedback or support that you need on these various steps, and like for example, in the grant program changes, like if you feel like, man, I really want these guys to give me some feedback on a nitty-gritty level, in order for, speaking for myself, to be able to accommodate that in a meaningful way, I'll need like some time to like go through it all and all that kind of stuff.
That's right.
You're very mindful of that kind of thing, but I guess also just letting us know is really helpful too. Like, hey guys, I just kind of want you to look at this and let me know, like, is this in the right direction? Or if you're really needing some more support to say, like, in this detail and that detail, if you can help us know what would be helpful to you, I think that helps.
Yeah,
That helps too.
that's great.
Well, and honestly, if you could get us things before meetings so we could look at them and then come here,
Yeah.
having had some time to think.
So something like a draft of an ordinance, I would definitely come to you ahead
Yeah.
of time. Mm-hmm.
And just depending on what level of support it is that you actually need on it, if it's something that's, I think sometimes with the board, it can be not always clear, like, what's a programmatic detail that's really a staff detail, and like, what's a detail that we can be helpful with. So helping us know which one is which, I think
Yeah.
could be helpful too.
That sounds good, and that's probably a great segue to the next part of our discussion, which I think Brandon's going to present instead of me, but because he's just a pro at the ordinance. He was the one that talked about it last month too, but maybe I'll pass it off to you and we'll kind of continue that conversation.
So I believe you all have a copy of the ordinance in front of you?
Yep.
So I'm just going to go over it again. And so what Rachel mentioned for next month, ideally, this advisory board, advisory commission is technically your function right now. I'll point that out here as we go through the actual ordinance. So we need you to make a recommendation. You're giving advice to the city council on the changing of the ordinance. So we want you to actually put right under, or have this body approve the changes that are going to be forwarded directly to the city council. Okay? And so the ordinance will be kept pretty much devoid of a lot of programmatic detail, but there's still a lot in here, so we're going to go through it. The first 2 pages are, well, let's say the first page is the beginning of any ordinance has the whereases. So these are kind of the reasons why, and they set the tone. We'll come up with some really good ones for that, but I don't want the commission to worry about that too much because it's not really. It shows some of the council's intent, but it doesn't really take effect in any meaningful way. It's what comes after the now therefore be it ordained by the city council is really where the ordinance starts. So first off, we have some definitions. So the only real change, and again, we're looking at this from the perspective of just changing based on what's here. So we'll update those whereases. That tells kind of the history before there was a Public Arts Commission. The whereases now would probably talk about how we've had an Arts Commission and it's done all these great things and why there's a reason to expand to culture. So in the definitions, we really would just be adding in a definition of culture. Along the lines of the length of what you're seeing there for the arts. So if in, please review this again when you have more time, and we'll probably largely include the same items or same terms and use the same definitions as they appear here. And if we are proposing specific changes, we'll let you know, but the main one to expect would be a definition for culture. On page 3, any questions? Let's do questions as we go along. Okay. On page 3, then, it's establishing the commission, right? So we would change the name of the commission. And then there's the mission statement, right? So you can see it's fairly long in the old form. And we would have a mission statement followed by a vision statement. And that's what Rachel was just discussing. So it's okay if you decide to go longer or shorter on the vision statement. It'll just appear here, but it's intended to, again, give context for what the purpose, the overarching purpose of this body is. And I often think of the vision statement as it's being written by somebody from the future who is experiencing now the world as after the work of your organization has been out there, right? So they're sort of reflecting back on what the world looks like now, or what Urbana is like now, what the arts program and arts and culture program is like now. Then composition and appointment. the primary change that needs to happen there is we would want to make sure we're also being specifically inclusive of the cultural diversity of Urbana in addition to the full diversity of the arts community. And we want our commission to be generally reflective of the composition of our population. And that's about all on that page. On page 4, we get into the duties
Brandon,
of...
can I interrupt you just with a quick question?
Yes.
I think I just missed it, because I know you were talking about the
Oh, yeah.
vision. Where, I'm not seeing an existing one. Did you say that that's going to be like inserted? I just missed
For
that
what?
part.
The vision
The
statement, where will
vision
it be
for-
inserted?
You could just add it.
Yeah.
Oh, just add it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We'd have
So
a...
we could change it to mission and vision.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd have 2 shorter statements there. Or, I mean, a shorter mission, and then we'd add a section for the vision statement.
Okay, gotcha.
So then on page 4, duties is the section, the functions and the duties. And so this is where it's pretty clear that the body as it is today has really just an advisory function. If you look at the action words and those numbered items below, oh, yeah. Okay, so yeah, Rachel makes a good point. Functions and duties generally, up above duties, there's a paragraph there that begins the functions and duties of the Urbana Arts Commission. Well, I'll just read it. Are limited to those set forth in this ordinance, and as specifically set forth in any other duly enacted ordinance. I'm not aware of any other ordinances that say anything about your duties. Nothing in this ordinance shall be construed as vesting legislative or budgetary discretion or power in the commission. So, you know, there's kind of a disclaimer on the front end that you don't have any budgetary say. And then, once we go into the duties, then you can see the affirmative definitions all use words as follows. Number 1, you're exploring and recommending. So in this, you know, in the exercise we're going through, we're exploring and recommending changes to the very ordinance that sets up this commission. On number 2, we're proposing the annual public arts program plan. And number 3, we're programming policies regarding the selection of public art projects. We're reviewing relevant proposals, convening temporary selection committees, recommending proposals, approving proposals for placement on municipal property. Oh, temporary, sorry. Not permanent. Mhm. Right. But that would be a council, or it could be a council decision if it's being placed on, I guess, I mean, it gets tricky sometimes. We, as staff, when council approves a budget, for example, that vests staff with the authority to, you know, spend money within those parameters in accordance with city policy. So we can, as staff, achieve an objective that this commission might have, you know, approved. But it isn't the authority of the commission that's letting us spend the money, I guess, kind of roundabout. Yeah, submitting for confirmation, overseeing, researching, encouraging, cooperating. So another thing to consider is that this ordinance was created, it's kind of the dilemma that came up before, is before we started doing all those things. So you can see when you read this ordinance that there was more of an expectation early on that this body would be really placing significant pieces of public art. And that outside of the King Park sculpture that was commissioned, there hasn't been a lot of that. And that gets to also on the same page, dedication. This is the 1% for the arts provision. And we, of course, would leave this in there, but it's saying that when the construction or alteration of a municipal building, right, basically more than $750,000, 1% of that is going to go towards public arts. And so this commission is involved in that process. And you were involved, I think, as a result of improvements to King School. I think that may have been what triggered the 1% for the arts in that instance. Was it before? Well, it's
It might have been being talked about at the time, but I don't recall what it was.
okay. It was the funding source for that project was a TIF district, TIF 3, that isn't in effect anymore. But you know, that was kind of how that one came about. But as you know, we do a lot more programmatically and with the grants program than we do some of the other things that are listed here.
Right.
So there's nothing really wrong with what's here, and we don't necessarily need to go back and change it. And I kind of felt like there might have been some concern if our vision statement didn't exactly say what we end up doing. This is intended to be broadly permissive, right? We're sort of broadly defining our scope, and you want it to be broad. You don't want to have to go back to council to ask for something more later. And the reason, and the last is the Public Arts Fund on the last page, that is no more, and it's not necessary to have a separate fund. And so that's a technical detail. We want that to come out. But back to the section on duties, I really would like the commission to think about what, if any, specific duties you might want to have. And I'm bringing this up again specifically in the context of our arts grants. This body has been the body that hears all the reporting for all of our arts grants. And so you become a knowledgeable group, having heard all of those. However, we appoint a jury that is, somewhat random, I guess, in terms of its composition each year. And the individuals on that jury, while we do usually have an Arts Commission member on those juries, may not necessarily have the same perspective you do as a body that's seeing those applications over and over again, and the reports that come on the back end. So there's two areas that could become very important. One is the question of repeat applications. We don't necessarily have a really clear policy about how repeat applications to the Arts Grants program are to be handled. We have come across language that implies that it shouldn't be allowed. I know this commission has debated that at times.
That was the last thing we left it at.
Yeah.
We were curtailing it to a certain number of years.
Okay. But in practice over the years, I don't feel that that's really been enforced.
Yeah.
So
I'm not sure it's even written down very clearly
Okay.
in a lot of our documents, so there's no reason an applicant would necessarily know that's true. I'm sorry, my
Right.
mic's not on. There's no reason an applicant would
Yeah.
necessarily know that's true. But these are areas for like maybe firming up or making a little bit clearer our grant program.
And the second area, well, why is that important, I guess, for repeat applicants? If an applicant comes back, it's important to know both what their application is, but also how they performed last time. And a change we are considering making is maybe we should just consider doing multi-year grants to allow for, a period of continuing support, and that might be easier to award and then, basically end participation. So you're getting a longer lease on the support from the grant program, but there's a clear end to it. So depending how we do it, though, it would be very relevant for this body to potentially be involved in the actual approval of the grant because you've seen the submittals after the fact. And
Are you talking about replacing juries with having us do it?
not necessarily. That's where it gets potentially complicated, because we could potentially bring to you a draft program that still involves a juried selection, but before that selection is finalized, or either on the whole this commission would vote on that, or perhaps only certain grant categories that either are recurring, or grants that have come back, or an applicant that's up for another repeated award.
Or even like certain sums, like a sum
Sums
of
above a
like a
certain
large
amount.
sum of, larger sums.
And that kind of brings to the other main area that's somewhat new to the program, in that the mayor and the council have moved, or I guess really just the mayor at this point has asked the public arts program to take on about approximately $50,000 of additional funds that have been given out to major events in our community. And these are major events that happen every year, and these are major events that have become used to receiving funding every year. And so there's some sensitivity around events that are long-standing, but if their funding level changes dramatically, 1 year, it could have a real detrimental effect on an existing organization. And so, there's an organizational capacity that has to be taken into consideration for these major events, both for a repeat applicant and also for those who are starting up. In essence, I'm trying to get at the fact that sometimes we need to read between the lines and look at the financial performance of these organizations to determine whether or not they're wise investments for large sums of money under the program.
Mhm.
And juries don't always get to that level. Sometimes they're
Sure.
more focused on the outcomes, how great it would be for something to occur. But when we're talking about large amounts or repeat awards, again, this commission may have a deeper understanding, having seen the report on what actually transpired, and
Mhm.
possibly with staff support going into greater detail on the financials.
How many people were affected and really used, and
Mhm.
how effective the return on the investment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
And we
yeah.
could build, excuse me,
Go
we
ahead.
could build things like, we've talked about a more intentional evaluation system for
Mhm.
the grantees. We ask them a set of questions, we ask for budgets, we ask for lots of information. Some say this is a very, this is a high stakes in terms of like the number of things that are asked in terms of a final report when the amounts are not huge. But at the same time, we don't ask for certain kinds of evaluation criteria deliberately. People include it, but we don't ask, for instance, about number of people reached, what populations are represented, any number of things that we could put into an evaluation criteria, but that could be another thing that's added to the program. I think I'm witnessing, for me, kind of two tensions. One of the tensions is that between wanting, as Brandon indicated, a special event funding that has essentially been, some monies that have almost been given out as sponsorship monies to some of the bigger events in the area that know to ask for it, and that also, have sort of received it a few years in a row, and in some ways may feel a connection to the idea that they're getting it forever,
Yeah.
and also the idea that it's important for these for funding like this to be transparent and to be accessible for anyone to apply to. And we would, of course, then still weigh, all of the things that would be important to weigh, such as, has this group produced a wonderful track record of this event? Does this event really mean something for the citizens of Urbana and the public and arts and culture? And would we want to make sure that it continues? And how do we want to support it? But I agree with Brandon in terms of the assessment of like the Public Arts Commission. If you are a body that continually reviews these things, and you are in some ways in a better position to make the tougher decisions than a jury, even though we are quite deliberate in how we put together juries, right? We really try to make sure we've got lots of representation on juries, but because our jury, our categories are such that, and this could also be an opportunity to like look at the grant categories. Our categories are really divided up based on who's applying and not what the outcome is. It's like who I am, so I'm an individual, or I'm a group, or I'm a nonprofit, or I'm somebody running a festival. But it doesn't say like I'm putting on I'm doing music, I'm doing stuff with youth, you know what I mean? But like, so our juries end up being kind of really developed with the idea that we're going to get a real diversity here in terms of cultural sector, in terms of different kinds of the arts, and we need some representation of people who have know-how on all of these juries, and that's a tricky thing to do. Our Public Arts Commission is representative of a lot of our creative communities, and so you have that background, and I think you also have that historical knowledge. So there's an opportunity here for the commission becoming more than an advisory body, and that's something that we should talk about, because we want to know your perspective on it, what you would like to see. But from a staff perspective, there's ways in which we can only share so much in a jury meeting, right? And also we can determine when we look at the grant program, like how much can I share, how much can I not? I mean, and that could be more defined. But we ask on grant applications, has somebody applied in the past? That's going to be needed to be revised to reflect the special event funding being sort of a different category in the past too. But we will get the usual suspects who apply, and we may get some new folks. And so we're going to need some historical knowledge, I think, in a way that could continue just with having some commissioners be involved in juries, but might benefit from a broader oversight.
So just I guess for a clarification,
Yeah.
or help me visualize how that new process would work.
Mhm.
So you'd have a jury that would do the selection process and provide like a recommendation to us as a commission for us to then use our historical knowledge and or, I don't know, background and all these outcomes and stuff, and then use that to finalize the grant
I mean, that could
program?
be one route, but another route could be like, let's say one category is large-scale special events, festivals, whatever we call them, but we might define that category a little bit different, and that category as larger sums of money, and that category in particular goes before the Public Arts Commission versus like individual artist grants could be juried or something like
And
that.
we'd have like discussions on it like here on air, and so like the people who are applying for the grants could come in and like defend their positions or provide clarification in their applications, that kind of thing.
I'd like to respond to that, and that's a consequence of this.
Yeah.
I consulted with our legal counsel here at the city to see if there's any way that this body could utilize a closed session. And unfortunately, there's only limited reasons why a public body can enter a closed session, and this unfortunately does not fall into that category.
Yeah.
However, I want to draw your attention to what currently happens with those major events, or did up to this point, which is that the council, city council, was the body that was making that decision. The proponents who were receiving the funding would come. You know, people had the ability to make public comment or persuade those council members as elected officials, and so you know the difference would be the change of venue, in that this is the group where those events are coming to report, right, and the breadth of all the events under the arts program. So it's sort of that, you know, with power comes responsibility. And this could be a place in which there could be some conflict that arises, but, you know, we want to invest in this body as a body that becomes very knowledgeable about the program and in the history of making those decisions, and thereby becoming the body best suited to make those decisions. But in short, you're taking that responsibility away from the city council. That's what we would be asking for in the form of an ordinance, would be to imbue this body with some specific authority that they're delegating. And it could be very narrow, it could be, it's going to be pretty narrow. I mean, I don't think there's reason to ask for a lot, but yes, that it could lead to shenanigans. More shenanigans.
Just more engagement and accepting
definitely.
responsibility
Yeah.
rather than taking something
Well,
away.
last month Eric said he was bored of things being too safe in this commission, so remember.
Well, just as a initial reaction to it, like I would prefer to have it in the public forum where somebody can defend it, because honestly, it's going to be subjective no matter how objective you try to make it, because these 5 people went to the event this year, and the next year nobody on the council went to the event, so
Sure.
now we've got a different way of weighing how valuable is that event.
Right.
So I would definitely prefer people be able to come and communicate about their thoughts on it anyway, but I guess just as an initial reaction to this discussion is as objective and as a, like, almost like, I don't want to, not documentation for the sake of documentation, but as documented as the opinions can be, I think the better, because even if after we saw a presentation, we all had an evaluation form of what we took, you know, from the presentation after the fact, because commissioners will change, and then at least you've got something that says, this was someone's opinion that was paying attention, and we've got that written down, and that's something that we can use, you know, to either change our minds or whatever it may be. But I think that's going to be the biggest challenge with this type of evaluation and being more intentional about it, is how do you measure that? And that's something that no arts administrator really knows how to do. I mean, so figuring out how we feel comfortable measuring it will be really important, I think.
I can relate to my activities as an orchestral musician and our administrator, where I have sat on audition committees for maybe 40 years. And it's the same kind of thing, because we're listening to someone make a proposal, and we either accept it and give them a job, or we don't. The same idea, but we have written documentation to verify why did we reach that decision, and if the person wants to have feedback, we have it available. Or if someone decides, well, why did you think that? I didn't think that way, and I didn't hear that. We can discuss it. We have a body of proof.
Having served on juries before for the arts grants, there were, like, I remember there being plenty of times where, like, clarification from the applicant would have been helpful on certain things. But then also, I think there's also times where, like, discussions, like, would have been, like, really sensitive too, like, and would have been hard to have in a public forum like this, especially making, like, tough decisions, distributing the money. But being more transparent would be good, I think, in my opinion.
I think that's true, especially if we're going to be talking about the larger sums of money and the groups that may feel invested in receiving that on a yearly basis. I would feel better having the discussion in public with everybody rather than having to make the decision, in a smaller group. Because, especially with large amounts and a lot of investment in them, that can be sensitive. But, if we all have reason and we all have documentation, I mean, someone's going to be sad, but we have to decide, that's our job.
Well, I'd rather know it ahead of time, instead of afterwards and going, oh, that sounded like a good project, but it really didn't reach very many people, and it didn't have the impact that we had all envisioned it might have. And so, the more we know, I'm sure the better informed we are, the better decision we can make.
And I do think that, and I really kind of in my brain, I think the dichotomy I see, the two ends of the spectrum are really like festivals, special events, individuals. Individual artists are usually the smaller projects, and my inclination right now is to keep those juried, because those tend to be more sensitive, and because sometimes a lot of first-time applicants are like showing you their little artistic baby for the first time, and I think would actually have a really hard time with a lot of public scrutiny on their little art project they're thinking about. Not to minimize, not everybody's project is really little, nor are they like a novice or somebody who doesn't have potentially years of experience, but feels different, and the stakes are a bit lower because those amounts are smaller. But the challenges I experience with the grant program that I hope get sorted out aren't just the administration and then who is, and sort of the built-in oversight and the platform then for people to kind of come back and say, hey, I didn't like the way that that deliberation went, and it was public and they get to say, I like that opportunity for people to be able to come vocalize and know who they're talking to in a way for the things that are higher stakes and more money. And connected to that, I think, is that you also have that historical knowledge and can draw from that. It's being a newer coordinator too, I couldn't draw from lots of historical knowledge even this past year. I'm new. So in juries, if people had questions, they had to go pursue them on their own. For instance, like we ask in the jury applications, have you received an arts grant in the past? If people wanted to look up how much money that group got, how much money that group has gotten, they can look it up because it's all public. All that information is available online. So I don't have to answer those questions per se, but it would be prudent of us to also identify like what are the things that we would want people to have in terms of historical knowledge. And I like the idea too, I think Katie mentioned it, of like kind of putting together even an evaluation that the commissioner would give, because one challenge I experience is like the people who see the full applications, which are the jurors, save for 2 public arts commissioners on each jury, which is a good substantial amount of the jury, but still, are not the same people who see the final reports in person or hear them, and don't really know and can't recall as easily, is this exactly what they said they were going to do? And I asked them to submit an addendum and all that stuff if they are changing anything else. So we have that built in. It's not that we're not doing that due diligence, but just having your own awareness, I think, is meaningful. And I agree with you about it's all going to be subjective to a degree anyway, right? Because as you said, it's one year to the next. It's what we're drawn to. it's all those things. And we have a process right now, for instance, for deciding if there is a conflict of interest. If it became part of the Public Arts Commission, we would have to become, I think, stricter than we have been about people on our commission being involved in grant projects
Yes.
or in any way being on boards or benefiting, et cetera. We'd have to figure that out. And because this is a small town, I'm kind of sensitive to like the way that we're so woven together that I want to also build a policy that's practical and reasonable, because it might not look the same as it does in New York City and Urbana. You know, there's a little bit more inherent like interconnectedness here that I feel every day at least, and I see a lot of nods, so I assume you do too. So we'd want to build something that really meets those needs of this specific place. So do you want more power?
Right. Well, do you want
Do you
to?
want more response burden? There's many words.
And it's a request.
You know, we can be your support system as well.
Well, if it's not this body, it may be the council still, and that doesn't necessarily align with the intent, I think, behind the move. Council currently makes a similar decision it's like a social services award of funding that the city does annually. And so they played out a process publicly where they all scored the different applicants and they heard a lot of presentations. It's very time consuming for the council to do that, but that's a reflection of what that process might look like. The other thing is that our special event agreements are much more involved than what our typical public arts grant agreement looked like. So there's a good chance that this body, you know, one specific authority you might actually be asking for is the ability to approve agreements of a certain, you know, price tag range.
Brandon, can you give an example of like the things that are built into those agreements that look different than our grant program?
I would think liability and insurance, for example, for some large events, for example.
Well, I mean,
come into
there's
play.
like basically waiving the city of any liability, but I believe that's going to be standard in our arts grants as well. The differences are in the reporting requirements, the expectations of them to, you know, we often do those on a reimbursement basis so that they need to demonstrate that the expenses actually occurred. We need to review those. They have to give us financial information. They can't just come and just do one a written report and a presentation as well before the council. And then there are, you know, we have, I guess, other provisions in there in case things go wrong. I don't think we really have a clawback per se, but we have more specific language about discontinuing funds or what happens if the organization goes under, because these are much larger sums of money. So we're concerned if, you know, they utilize half of it or don't put the event on fully, what's going to happen in those scenarios.
Sure.
But it's 5,000 and up probably is the range we're talking about. So it's not really, it wouldn't be this body approving direct expenditure of funds. It'd be more likely you'd have authority to enter into agreements and replacing the function that the council had.
The university has something similar to that too, because I handle a lot of private events for the university, and depending on what level of money is involved, they have differences in the paperwork and how you make application for that money. So makes sense.
I also think it's potentially transitioning to something more akin to how a private foundation board functions. Private foundations, often their board is directly involved in the awarding of the grants, and it allows for that sort of finessing. And it opens up an opportunity that with the transition to an Arts and Culture Commission, we have an opportunity to be more deliberate in the criteria for who's receiving money and not. So we can include goals about outreach, you know, and diverse outreach as well, and then look at that in the eval process. So, I mean, I would hope we could actually create criteria that are objective and measurable, and we wouldn't be dependent on the idea that commissioners need to go to every event so that they can, you know, make decisions. Yeah.
Right.
We have a question currently on all of our grant applications related to that asks like, what steps are you taking? I don't remember exactly how it's phrased, but it's like, what steps are you taking to reach out to diverse sectors of the community. And some people leave that blank, and it's at a real detriment to them. But I think that right now it's kind of a just like write what you want right there. And I think that it would really benefit from some more criteria. And so that could be a place too where we're asking some deliberate questions or asking for a deliberate plan. We ask for a marketing plan. We ask for some stuff of that nature, and we could get more specific on what we're looking for. And not in a way that creates a mountain of more work, but maybe gets to the point of what we're actually wanting to see on the application.
We have a responsibility for that money, how it's spent and used properly, so.
Yeah.
I think you have the right to ask for it.
Okay. Anything else?
Just if there's other comments or guidance in that general area, I mean, we'll take anything you have to say now and try to distill it into a proposal.
The one last comment I have is that even irregardless kind of the threshold, I do think some sort of evaluative process from the reports would be helpful in the juries, because I've been on maybe 3 juries over the time I've lived in Urbana, and I think even at the 2,000 to 2,500, that seems like a spot where people start to go like, wow, that's big, because when you're in that category, that's a big amount, whereas somebody who's maybe an individual artist is asking for 250. So I think even having the evaluation process connected regardless of whether or not this body would be the one that would approve the money, I think that could be healthy for those applicants in those smaller batches if you determine that that's the best way to handle those.
Yeah, and so I think it would mean also building some sort of system for evaluations that might like flag a question around like a repeat applicant, for instance, like if they withdrew their money, their like grant. Like we had that happen already this year. I mean, we had a couple of times, I think, people who like decided not to accept their money. They didn't go through with their project.
When Charlie came to talk about his project, that was one example. Just didn't, unfortunate that it happened that way, but those things.
Dennis, right?
Dennis Robert, I'm sorry, yes. Sorry,
Yeah, so
thank you.
Dennis and I know that they haven't come here yet, but West African Drum and Dance also gave official notice that they're unable to do their West African Drum and Dance Festival, the Midwest Mending. So, you know, we've had this happen before where things just didn't come together and people have to come back and say it's not going to happen. But, you know, and it's unfortunate, but those things often should probably create some sort of red flag that at least allows them to have to maybe answer a question of like, well, how is this year different? You know, if you're applying again, what has changed that was going to permit you to absolutely see this project through? Right. We can decide to be as severe as we want to be, and we can kind of build that up as we need.
You think of a bank and loaning money for a mortgage, and then somebody defaults, and then they apply later on again. Well, why should we follow? How do we know we could trust you again because you weren't able to take care of business the first
What
time?
mechanisms are now in place? Exactly. I think it's a fair question.
I also wonder if that was because the funding they asked for was funding that is a significantly lower amount. And then I think that's a different discussion too than we gave you all this money that you wanted and it still didn't go through. You know what I mean? If I asked for 1,000 and I got 250, you know, how do I as an artist still do a project with a quarter? Maybe I didn't even ask for all you know, depends. I think that could raise different questions too.
Yeah, but some of those people wouldn't apply again either.
That's something that's come up a few times, and that's probably just more an administrative detail of the program, but I think we would probably want to create some specific policy about minimum grant awards and percentage, like we'll never fund less than half or something. And so that instruction is given to the jury, and it's helpful too because it's just a natural group tendency, not just in art juries, but to want to kind of spread it out and make sure everybody gets something. But sometimes that's really detrimental when you have a limited pot of money and a lot of applicants. So it would be better probably to force the jury to make decisions and at least fund people at 50%. I mean, I don't know if those will be what we end up recommending, but.
I've been a part of a grant program that also had asked the question on the application of like, what minimally do you need from this funding source in order to do your project, see your project through. And if we couldn't fund that percent, I mean, it would sometimes make or break whether they got funded, because it was like, well, they're not going to take any less than that. We can't afford to give it, so we're not giving them anything.
Right.
So that's the sort of trickiness, is deciding to like give less than asked for to give something versus letting it be that project's decision of saying, well, actually, because some projects are saying, you know, I've got a little artistic portion of a much bigger project. So my budget's actually quite big, but I'm asking for you to just cover this. So when they actually give us the budget, it covers all kinds of things, some of which is not artistic fees whatsoever or has anything to do with that. So that's, you know, I think it's a hard job for the juries, because they're really going through tons of pieces of projects.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And they're all so different. And that too can create problems. You know, we've had like individual and nonprofit are on the same jury. Group and festival tend to be on the same jury. But what groups, I mean, the categories present some issues, because also people interpret them as they will. You know, like me and my best friend, are we suddenly a group versus like, we're not a 501c3, but if we were, then we'd apply for nonprofit. So it gets a little, you know, I think we get to firm up the categories, make deeper sense of them for people, and that could even be helped with some criteria. But I will tell you, this feels a little bit of a beast.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been trying to look
always
at other
has
grant
been.
programs, and I know this grant program's also been revised a number of times, probably very thoughtfully every time. So,
It will be in the future.
yeah, it will be going forward.
I can imagine Illinois Arts Council has to go
Yeah.
through something very similar, with all the groups from all over the state applying for a limited amount of money.
Yeah.
Same idea.
But to your point, Janelle, that came up last month too, when I talked about all the different things that we tend to see as like tensions in the program, or questions that come up over and over again, that I would want to address as much as we can in a revision.
You know, Brendan, I was thinking about the percentage towards the arts. Don't quote me, but I think part of where that came from was because at the time there was the redevelopment of the North Cunningham area and the South Philo Road. That was all part of that. And so that 1% for the arts, I think it partly came out of that those changes were going on at that time. You have to look back about 9 years or so, or just actually even a little bit more, because it was all in the pre-planning.
I mean, it's a good policy, because it ensures that if the city makes an investment in a municipal property, that that this commission and the arts program are going to play a role in, you know, making a piece of it. So I left out the most obvious example, Boneyard Creek Crossing.
There
You
you
know,
go.
I don't
Right.
recall the total, but I think it was, I mean, it's tens of thousands certainly,
Yeah.
was put towards that towards the art that was physically incorporated
Yeah.
into the infrastructure there, which
Right.
is neat.
And it worked well.
And the city is about to select a consultant for the facilities study. That was a top priority for Mayor Marlin when she came into office, so they'll be initiating that soon. It'll still take probably another year, but that's the kind of thing a municipality does before it makes a major investment in facilities. So, you know, no guarantees what they'll choose, but it applies to both renovation and new construction. So whether they remodel or build new, ideally that creates an opportunity for the
Good.
public arts program to, again, incorporate art.
That'd be good.
So the hotel's auction today will be then part of that too, maybe?
No,
There was an
that's
article in the
private
paper.
property.
That's all
The city
private
is not auctioning
We're not involved
it.
in it anymore. 'Cause we-
Not directly.
Okay.
I mean, we sort of cheerlead for important properties, and that's a important location in the downtown, but that wouldn't apply. It would only be if we built a new public safety building, renovated this property, you know, did another major public improvement, or another phase of the Boneyard Creek, for example,
I
those
see.
sorts of
Yeah.
things.
Thanks. Okay.
Oh, on that note, it's a lot to digest. Okay, does anybody have any announcements before we
I just
close?
had one, sorry to
Oh, no, go
prolong
ahead.
the discussion.
Yeah,
but,
that's okay.
I won't be here next month, but I'd like, I don't know if it's possible either, but when you rework this ordinance and like kind of firm up some of these discussions, I'd like to be able to read it ahead of time and maybe give feedback instead of being here, if that's possible. If not, it's fine.
We can try to get it out like a week early. saying this.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have an arts fair to just take
You're,
care of.
you're like a little busy. I get it.
We're not gonna think about it until next week, but after next week, we'll think about it real hard.
After you recover.
I'll think about it tomorrow.
Yeah.
You're right.
I just want to, I have, I guess, a tiny little piece of new business, and it connects with welcoming Courtney. But, you know, these meetings have new business sort of at the end, and sort of we put announcements there too, and don't really have enough room for this at the beginning. But I would love to invite, if possible, each of us to say who we are, how long
sure.
we've been on the commission, and maybe say super brief about yourself so that Courtney can kind of get to know everyone on the commission too, since this is her first meeting. And she told you a little bit about herself already.
Yeah.
Not to put you on the spot.
But you're on.
Hi, I'm Jessica Snyder. I'm a graphic designer at an engineering firm here in town. My background, I used to, when I was in school here at U of I was the public arts intern, and then worked here in town for a few years before I met my current job, and now I'm on the commission, so.
How long have you been?
Oh yeah, that too. That's a really good question. I think like 2 years.
Okay, I'm Sarah Jones, and I have a degree in technical theater from here, from the Krannert Center, University of Illinois. And I've sort of traveled all over the world and done all sorts of art things. I sew and paint and design, and I direct the winter play at the university, not the university, at the Urbana High School, because I'm a teacher there. I teach English. And I don't know, my new project is I have to make 15 sets of armor in my basement. So, you know.
In your spare time.
In my spare time.
Right.
Yeah. And other than that, I've been on the commission, is it 3 years? Is it 3? Sure. Something like that.
I'm Katie Harrell. I work in the fundraising operation at the university and have been there for about 8 years. And I've been on the commission for about 1.5 years-ish now, maybe a little bit longer than that. My background is my undergraduate studies were in classical flute, so classical flute performance and piccolo. And I studied arts administration in a master's degree program at the University of Wisconsin. And at the Bolt Center, are you familiar with the Bolt Center up there?
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, it's a really great place. I'm actually headed there this weekend, so I won't be in town for the Art Expo.
Oh, no.
Because there's an alumni event there that we're committed to go to. But when I moved here to Champaign-Urbana, there was a hiring freeze at the university, and the majority of the arts jobs are under the auspice of the university here, which left me in a little bit of a predicament. So I ended up in advancement at the U of I, but have been really involved in the community here, Chacacha, 40 North, some other things along the way from a volunteer standpoint, so have been able to be involved that way.
Okay, I'm Pat Salmon. I'm the chair of the commission. I have been on the commission for 10 years, and I'm retired now, but I was an editor at Human Kinetics for 23 years, so.
Hi, welcome. My name is Barbara Hedlund. I've been on the commission for 10+ years because I was also part of the public task force that formed this commission. So I earned this gray hair. I'm a professional musician. I'm a cellist, teacher, music publisher, orchestra manager. I'm the gig mom. I run the booking agency in town. So I do a lot of things that are music related.
Janelle?
I'm Janelle Orcherton, and I'm a saxophonist, and I teach. Similarly, do shows, teach a lot of students, have my hands in a lot of musical things. So I'm originally from Canada, but now I live here. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Brandon Boyes. I'm the Economic Development Manager. So I'm the division manager over the Public Arts Program, as well as the Farmers Market and the regular Economic Development and Business Incentive Programs for the city. Our division's in the Community Development Department, which also includes grants management, the Planning Division, and building safety. And I've been with the city for 6.5 years. And my mother was a public high school art teacher her whole career until she retired. So
Brandon, you should also mention your background in the arts.
I mean,
You might not have heard it before.
Okay.
I don't have any.
Let's hear it.
I don't. I do, but I was in. Well, I mean, you want the whole rundown. I was in choir in high school, and I haven't been in anything all that formal, but I was in a puppet troupe in college.
Political puppet theater.
A political puppet theater.
All right.
We traveled around.
You didn't even know.
And I did community theater for a few years in northern Wisconsin at a really nice playhouse
Oh, we
in
have
Washburn.
new respect for you now.
Thank you.
There you go.
This is
All
how
right.
you earn
I
street
never
cred
knew
at
this.
the Public Arts Commission.
That's right.
dropping names. I'll bring pictures next time.
Please do. We expect a full PowerPoint presentation at the next meeting. If you don't do it, somebody will, probably.
What's that?
Did you know Gene Lombard?
Where?
And he lives in around, well, actually in Westby, Wisconsin.
Okay, I've been to Westby, but to the dairy.
He's originally from South Africa. He also makes furniture.
Is it Bread and Puppet, or is that? I don't know. Yeah.
Oh,
It was a protege who came out of, I think, the Minneapolis arts or puppet scene there. They had the May Day Festival, and what's the other one called? Bare Bones. Chris Lutter Gardella was who I worked with, and he's gone back to Minneapolis and has done a lot of work with theater. But his style of engagement, in fact, when we did the National Endowment for the Arts call, I tried to get folks I'd worked with to come down because their whole thing is they go and find all these materials and gather, mostly children usually, but adults with playful minds too, and say make cool puppets. And so there's usually a period of time where they make a lot of puppets, and then they tell stories with those puppets, and then they put on a performance. And it's so amazing, and it's literally just people's creativity and a bunch of found objects. But I'm sure there are other talented folks in our area who might be able to do that kind of thing.
Mark Ensign
For sure.
Puppet Workshop is on September 30th.
Well, and Ann Newman and Mike O'Brien, too.
Everyone.
Yeah.
I will mention, Courtney knows me a little bit already, so she's heard this before, but I have been in this position. August 7th was my 1-year anniversary. So it went by pretty quick. But I still consider myself a little new to the public arts coordinator position. I spent the last 8 years working for the university in the Women's Center, which is along with the cultural centers in OIIR. And my background in the arts is pretty wild and vast. I grew up in classical dance, then moved into Irish folk dancing, and then did theater. And from there, I started doing more visual arts stuff. So it sort of moved around. But I got to know the arts program over the last few years since its inception because I was participating in it in various ways. So I had done Artists of the Corridor, Art at the Market, they're not all coming to mind right now, but I was a grant recipient a couple of, I think, 4 years in a row. So I've had these sort of different experiences with the arts program and was really excited to come on this side of it. And that was actually my vantage point this year when we were even doing the grant program was, I've been where you guys are sitting, but never where I'm sitting. So I'll tell you things that were useful that someone told me. And her name was probably Pauline, and before that, Christina. So it's like I could benefit in that way, but I'm still getting kind of my own footing and learning about what kinds of things have been working well for the program and what we want to change and grow. But I love the arts. It's so close to my heart, and I'm really excited to have you join us.
Yes. All right. On that note, I move that we adjourn. Can I have a second? We are done. Thank you.